Today's episode is presented by Lodestar, the fee experts.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Lodestar's Lending Leaders. Our guest is a longtime friend, client of ours, Hoyt Mann. Hoyt, thanks for joining us today. Hoyt's the president and co-founder of Alanna.ai, which is artificial intelligence in the title industry. So, Hoyt, I'm excited to talk about the robots taking over and all of those types of things that people think about with AI. But to first, tell me a little bit about, what got you into title, what's kept you in there, and then why AI in the title insurance industry.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I appreciate the invitation. Appreciate the opportunity to be on podcast here with you. So my saying is, you're either born into title or you're tricked into title.
Yep.
And I was tricked into title. I'm a technologist, and I got tricked in by my longtime co-founder Randall Nelson and close friend. So he tricked me in the early 2000s, and we've been working together ever since.
I like that. I've said you've born into it or you're stuck, but I like tricked. I was born into it, but I heard someone too. They went to interview for a job that they thought was at a tile company, but it wound up being at a title company. Now this person's like an executive in the industry too, so it's they were certainly tricked.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, my background is software engineering. I'm a software developer by trade, and that's how I got into the industry. I jumped into to a company called RamQuest back in early 2000s, and my co-founder founded that company. And that's I knew nothing about title, but I knew a lot about software, and so we've been working together again ever since. So it's good to be in this industry, and it's one that I think you probably well know that. There's no way out other than a pine box. So
that's a little morbid. You can only say like a condo in Florida or something like that, right?
Okay.
You can at least retire a little bit, right? So I guess it's fresh in your mind if you've been to an industry conference lately, but
that's true.
So, obviously coming from RamQuest, right, having that track record of a title production system, a real core system for title companies, looking at all of the problems out there to solve, why AI, right? There are a lot of problems. There are a lot of things in title. They talk about title coming into the 21st century. In some cases, it's not out of the 19th century. So how do you even go about doing something like AI?
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. And like I said, there's just no way out of this industry. So when RamQuest sold to Old Republic, Randall and I left the industry and went into customer service and support. And so there, in that customer service and support industry, there's some really big companies. And so you can get away, and we did for many years, being a small to medium-sized solution. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the big guys kind of came down into the SMB marketplace. And so when you think about as a technologist, you try to solve problems in different ways. And one of the problems that we solved at RamQuest was we were bringing a portal to title production systems, and the product was called Paperless Closer, and we launched that product and won an award for it because we innovated in that space to actually give a web portal when people didn't even have websites. We gave them a web portal that was functional more than a brochure, that actually gave insight into the production system. And so that was back in 2001 when we won that award, and pretty excited about winning that award. But that's really, when you look at the roots of our company and kind of what we've done over the past couple of decades, it's been about innovation in an industry that arguably could stand a little bit of extra innovation. So, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit, when you're drilling down to AI, what are the types of things that people, at least present day, are automating using AI? How is it used in a functional sense?
Yeah, I love it that we were solving this problem of staffing issues. This concept of everybody's being overworked, and how do you create some efficiencies? And so a virtual assistant, came into play. But the interesting part was, when I talk with people about AI, there's a lot of times people don't realize how inundated their lives are with AI. I mean, you get AI through Netflix, you get AI through Google Maps, you get AI through, Alexa or Siri. You have AI all over in your personal world. And now in the business world, you start seeing AI come to bear. And so the concept is that, what people do in their personal lives will tend to bleed over into business. And we've seen that with, cell phone usage for business purposes and, and bring your own device type models and things like that. So this expectation that businesses should internally and externally operate the same as as your car does, respond to your text Jim, hey, I'm going to be on the meeting on time, and so this concept of AI in business is it's been creeping in through pretty much every aspect of our life. And so when you look at that and you say, well, I solved my grocery list with Alexa, being able to add things to my grocery list just whenever I think about it, I've solved that in my personal life. Right. Well, now I come over to business and I'm like, well, how can I solve some of my business problems with Alexa? Well, that's not really Alexa's role just yet. Alanna comes to the stage and we're here to solve some of those business problems.
Right. And you think of, how many inquiries do you get that are, hey, here's a pricing sheet, here's our contact information, here's where you can get what you need, right? Even if I think in technology, people often look for that silver bullet, right? Of like, this thing is going to solve every problem we have. And that's just almost never the case, right? But if you can take away 50% of your problems and 50% of your time, that's impactful.
It really is. And it comes back down to things like, there's some simple examples of, why it's how people work today that they didn't work like in 5 years ago or 7 years ago. And I found it extremely interesting, and the problems people are solving with technology these days, just even our companies interacting together, giving somebody, in essence, a voice activated virtual assistant that could reach out to your company and get rates and fill out
give a pricing quote without actually having to use a calculator, right? You just, kind of putting it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people are getting better about engaging with that type of stuff. You were talking about kind of AI bleeding into our lives, and I was thinking of an example from this morning of I had to verify, I got sent like the 6-digit authentication for my bank, right? And my phone has the feature where it gets sent, and then you don't even have to leave your screen. It says, hey, they pull automatically from your text messages. Pretty sure this is what you're looking for, Jim, right? Click, goes right in. That's great, right? That's just another example. Or Google, we use Gmail, right? So they have like a sentence completion feature. And I get a little bit frustrated when they actually guess correctly, right? At the end of like, hey, let me know if you need anything else, or I'm here if you have any questions. I'm like, okay, like I both really like it, and it makes me a little bit uneasy sometimes too.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And that to me is as we're getting there, you don't realize, I have a daughter that's in college, and I watched how it wasn't that, she would have a calculator beside her, but she would ask Alexa to do a math problem for her. And I'm like, it's not that you don't have the tools at your fingertips. Right. It comes to this frictionless flow of how you're working, that you don't have to take your hands off the keyboard. Right. You can keep focusing on what you're doing. And oh, by the way, you have an assistant helping you out that's there waiting.
Right. Well, it's 45 times 17.
Right. That's it. Yeah. Sure, you pull the calculator right over and do it, but
I think you're not losing anything by doing that, right? You're still like, whether you're having a machine help you one way or another, right? It's just I think a different level. So you talked about some of the things you're doing now. What does AI look like in the future, right? I think people take new technology, especially in this industry, and take it to a conclusion that doesn't really make any sense, right? Are we going to have AI realtors? Are we going to have AI title officers, loan officers? Like, how far is this going to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the one that I think about often. I think back to, when I started my career about 25 years ago, or maybe better 30 years ago, I think back to some of the technology. It was cutting edge technology back then. I was working with the government we were scanning documents and using OCR technology. Yeah. And that was 30 years ago. And so as you look today, you're like, is OCR still applicable today? absolutely still applicable today.
Yeah.
Now, where does AI plug into that? Well, you take characters and you make into words, and you take words and you make into sentences, and you take sentences and you put decision making around those sentences. And when it concerns language, and when it concerns names or things like that. And so what we're working on is data extraction, and then putting logic and thought around the data. Now I have it extracted. What can I make decisions on this data? So is this a purchase contract? Is this a cash contract? And can I take more steps on my process, given some knowledge applied to the data that's being pulled out?
And then you have the ability to, through AI or machine learning, which is usually what most people end up calling AI, right? In many cases, is just, you have kind of the system trains on human decision making. Right. So you see a human do this, like with my email example, they've seen me, right, ask me if you have any questions enough times in emails that they know that's what's going to happen. Right. So you train a machine to effectively do that. And then what I think you're always going to have the human component be is there's edge cases. Right. So if now, you're able to cut out the 80% of your things that take up 20% of your time, or I think I flipped that, right? Let's work on that other top 20%. Let's work on the things that are a little bit trickier, or the actual like human to human relationship component of the business too.
Yeah. One thing we run into a lot is, somebody says, "Hey, is Alanna a chatbot?" And I used to kind of bristle at that. I'm like, she's not a chatbot. She's a virtual assistant. She's got a brain that's growing over the years, and she's becoming more and more intelligent, so much so that when we look at conversations, she's confused almost more times as being a human, even though she says she's not, than she does an actual
even just the way you're
assistant.
saying she, right? Just like the kind of,
That's it.
My wife and I always talk about that with our Google Home, of like saying thank you and humanizing it, right? Like we always joke, we're like, oh no, you have to be nice so that way, when the machines take over, like they'll be nice. Our kind of inside joke, but
that's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exact. I'm sorry I cut you off there.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that's exactly right. Who thanks a machine for doing work for them? Nobody really. But when you find yourself thanking something for doing something for you, it humanizes it. And that's really the future that we're running into.
Part of why there's names, right? Alanna, Alexa, Siri, that's, very much intentional.
It was.
So this is, I think we've worked together for a few years. Alanna, you've a few years into this now. How have people's, their attitudes towards this changed over the last few years?
Yeah, it used to be the early adopters come into our door ready to take on the technology. And now we're getting into mainstream. People, and like I said before, I was talking about chatbots and I'd bristle at it, but really what we're talking about here is a version 2 of where we're all headed. So yes, it's a chatbot, but it's version 2. But mainstream, now all of a sudden it's like, think about Tesla 10 or so years ago. People are like, oh, that's kind of new. And there's some cutting edge people getting in line ready to go. Now it's more everyday, common that somebody has an electric vehicle or not, maybe not a Tesla, but they're more open to that. And that's what we're seeing in this virtual assistant. I mean, I was just looking at Chili's rolling out these robots to do very mundane and human-like tasks, which is take somebody to their table or deliver drinks to them. But now we're really getting into a point to where everybody is really very comfortable with a virtual assistant. And, I thank Google and I thank, Apple for those innovations.
Oh, absolutely. And it's curious for me. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and just seeing we have a Google Home. So we'll say, ask about the temperature or something like that. And she's slowly learning that oh, I can ask this thing and this comes back. So I'm curious to see what that, what the interaction becomes. Right. And then you hear about the kids who order. I just saw someone ordered 25 cheeseburgers or something like that. Right. So, obviously have to be careful, but it's always funny to see those types of stories and stuff come through. So you had, our production team did a really good job here looking up information on you. And I have a quote from your Twitter account saying, being successful in software is knowing how to release software quickly and efficiently, giving your customers what they need while working on the next great thing. Right. So we have a lot of technologies that are kind of entering the industry in one way, shape, or form. But what's the next big thing? What's the next AI going to be in this space?
Yeah, it's you touched on it. It's the learning component and doing more automated learning is in my mind, because right now there's a lot of training, kind of talked about machine learning, and it's really training and giving examples, and there's a lot of human involved training. I think what we'll see is a little bit more of a lean into machine-led training.
Yeah.
And so getting a little bit smarter about how it trains itself, through predefined examples and a little bit more or less of a manual task in the training process. That's what I see. And I see more of these type utilities popping up that are domain specific. So, we talk about title production systems and having a virtual assistant basically be able to gather information quicker than a human can do it, which is, it's a little scary to think about it. You're like, wow, a machine can answer the question faster than I can, but that gives more, lends more to the need around it and the efficiencies that you can get from it. So, Yep.
And I think people are, especially in the industry, I think are getting better about kind of marrying the two and understanding that it's not just the shiny technology. It's just not using AI for the sake of using AI. It's how do I have it take over a task that will help this person do their job better, right? Not necessarily replace a person, right? I think that's all too much of like, no, you're still going to have this person here, but let's have them do something that a machine can't. Let's have them focus on edge cases, focus on relationship management, focus on things that are just higher value at the end of the day. Which I think is better for the person. It's better for the company. It moves things forward. So I think people are better and better about kind of, starting to figure out what that looks like. We say the same thing with automation of fee disclosures, and people always come to us and say, hey, what do I do with all the staff I'm firing, right? And I don't look at it that way. And I think people are a little bit short-sighted. And unfortunately, we're at a time now where, there's lots of layoffs in the industry, right? And I think the people who embrace technology like Alanna, people who embrace the technology out there, are going to be able to kind of prevent that, human capital change, right? At the end of the day, like if you can have more and more technology doing the variable stuff in the industry and keeping staff, it's going to make things easier, and you're going to avoid, situations like a lot of companies are in now.
Well, I think what was going on, just to take a minute here, looking at the industry, you mentioned layoffs, but when we looked at in the past 2 years, business ramped up so fast that hiring was such a huge issue.
Yeah.
Now we're on the other side of that, where if you spent a large amount of effort into hiring the right people, and they're with you and they've been trained and they're ready to go, as a business owner, the last thing you want to do is let those well-trained, highly selected individuals, out of your company. And there's a lot of investment that goes on to bringing on people. And so I think maybe in the past, it was a little easier ebb and flow of kind of hiring and right sizing the business. But this day, it was so much effort to get these people on board. What we've seen is people adopt technology, and they're able to retain that talent that they worked so hard to get over the past couple of years, and then do more with that talent because they got the right people in the organization. So,
No, I think that's a great point. And more and more companies, I think especially smaller ones like us, are starting to address that. And hopefully it changes, because I was just having a conversation with someone from outside the industry talking about mortgage, talking about title. And he's like, yeah, times are tough now, but like those title agents, they just had 2 great years. So like, it's fine. What are they complaining about? Right. And my response was, yeah, I mean, the owners, right, the folks running companies are going to be fine. X big bank out there is going to be fine. But what about the 500 people they had to lay off, or the 5,000, 50,000 people they had to lay off, right? There's human capital. There's, actual consequences to this. And I think that's the problem, right? When you have that much fluctuation, it affects people's lives.
Well, and I wanted to touch on one more topic, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And it's the concept of trust.
Yeah.
You talk about how does the industry change, and there's this concept of trust in the technology. And I'm really coming at it from Alanna. Trusting Alanna gains additional adoption.
Right.
There's a comfort that people aren't double checking what's going on, and they start to trust technology. But over the past few decades, trust between companies and employees has always been an issue.
Yeah.
And, ebbs and flows. It's like the buying selling market. It's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. But, there's a concept of trust that I think, can be applied to technology. And it's something that you and I have to, that we try to instill in everybody that works with us, whether it be a partner or an employee. It's establishing that trust, and it's easy to break, but it's super hard to build. And it's a job that we all have to do.
I think that's a really fantastic point, right? People
need to trust with us that fees are accurate, they trust that I can rely on this, or they trust that the experience someone's getting with Alanna is going to be a good enough experience for them to want to continue to work with the company, right? And I think that one of the things that we're promoting more and more, we call the Lodestar Guarantee. And it's like, you can trust that we are going to do these things. We're going to pick up the phone. We're going to get back to you quickly. We're going to, deal with any problems if you have cures on fees. So I never really thought of it in terms of trust, but I think that's really important, right? Because you think of how you work with different other, technology at the end of the day. I trust that Google Maps is going to not drive me off a cliff, right? I trust that it's going to get me where I'm going faster than me figuring it out myself, right? You think of how much trust you put in technology on a daily basis.
And that's when it gains benefits for you, is when you trust it. Because if you had to second guess all the things that were happening, then the technology doesn't become very useful. It's a burden.
Yeah, and you have the you talked about early adopters. You have the laggers, right? The late adopters who say, "Oh, I don't trust Waze. I can get where I'm going faster," right? In some cases that's right, but it's just funny. I feel like there's always that mistrust of technology, and I don't think it's going to serve people well.
No, and it comes back to your original, some of the points that you made at the beginning, which is it's a human technology partnership. It's not that robots are taking over our jobs. There's, it's about working in tandem with technology to be be able to get the job done, and and to be efficient along the way. But use the tools to do your job better. And that's what I use my daughter as an example. But she's just using tools at her disposal that make it easier for her to do what she's got to do. So, I think that's what we all do.
Right. And then there's just so much more information to process. I was reading a book that had said, I think the average Sunday paper has more knowledge in it than a person's brain held in the 1800s, right? Or something like that, right? It's just like the amount of information you're inundated with every day. You need those tools, right? You need a way of processing it. You need a way of breaking through the noise. And I think one last thing on trust too, because I really like that concept. In the same way that you have to trust the technology, I think people adopting this technology need to trust that their staff will figure out something to do if they're not dealing with basic client requests, right? Sending people feed sheets that they could get online or automate, directing them to the right thing. Trust that your staff will do the things that help your business. So it goes both ways, not just trusting the data, but you got to trust the people too.
Yeah. And, there comes in, we talked about fear. So there's fear and trust. Yeah. And that concept of fear is, it's hard to question yourself, to say, when I'm busy day in and day out, am I doing the right things? So if you are introduced with a way that's going to basically, if we were to say it's going to cut your workload down by half, you're like, wait a second, but I'm busy every day and I'm doing valuable things every day. But then you have to reevaluate and say, well, am I really doing value? Is being busy
in some
productive?
Cases, busy equals job security.
Right? Like you've probably gone through this too. We've pitched our product to the person who's doing it manually now and views it as part of their job security. You will never make that sale, right? You will never make the sale to the person that views what you're replacing and automating as their job security. So either you have to talk to someone else at the company who understands this, or reframe the way that person thinks about what they're doing, or, gets to a point where the pain is too much. If I can't do this myself, okay, I get it. I need this, right? So there's a lot of that.
And then there's, again, we're back in the trust circle, which is trusting the company is going to leverage your skills to do even more of what you do really well. Yeah. But, there's this bleed that happens on a day in and day out. It's this scope creep. This now it's emails, and now it's phone calls, and now I got different chats going on. I got online meetings. I'm more productive, and it's like I'm more busy. But then at the end of the day, it's like, was all that really productive?
Right.
And again, can something help take something off your plate? And as an alpha male that likes to fix everything and do everything myself, losing some control is an uncomfortable situation. But what I found at the end of the day, it's a better situation. So yeah.
Right. It's like, how much of these things do you want to do? And for me at least, you just have to figure out things to replace it with, right? Whether it's you personally of, instead of fielding these calls or doing this task, I can do these things I enjoy a lot more, right? Like, in every aspect of business that comes in. So, and I've also had good team members who I trust, and they're very good about prying things out of my hands. So that always helps too. But it's kind of funny and ironic too, that a conversation starting with AI and automation and, robots in some ways becomes so much about that humanity, that trust, all of those things. So I feel like there's a lot of, misconceptions about it out there.
It really is. When you look at it on the surface, you're like, okay, AI, and it's really almost does it dissatisfaction. But every person I've ever talked to, if I can give you an assistant, would you like a personal assistant? And every person says yes.
I would love a personal assistant.
Would you love a personal? Yes, I'd love a personal assistant. What things do you do in your day that you hate to do, or take time that you wish you could do doing something else? Well, it's taking out the trash, or it's laundry, or it's all these things. It's like, okay, replace that with some, and you can have the time to do more things. And so it's just shifting that a little bit. But as we all get more comfortable with this term, and again, every year I see virtual assistant and AI being a term that I used to stay away from when I talked about Alanna, but now it's shifting a little bit to where we lean into it a little bit more, because the market understands it's not robots taking my jobs.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense.
So like anything else, time is just kind of getting people more comfortable with all of that too. So it's always nice when you have, those Google and Amazon, being those wedge breakers for you too. So that makes it really easy, and Apple. This time always goes by fast. The last question we have, we ask all of our guests, what inspires you? What is your lodestar? What is that, guiding light, that North Star that, gets you excited about bringing AI to the title insurance industry, or just getting up and running a company every day?
Yeah. True inspiration is when I look around and I see the innovators around us. I see the people that are bringing, they're challenging the status quo, and that gets me invigorated, and I love, some of the NPR, how I built this stories are just great stories. And those all inspire me, because it's challenging the way we currently think about business as it is today. And it challenges me to think about it differently, to say, you know what, we don't have to do this thing that we're doing today the same as we always have done it. There might be a better way. And so I gain inspiration by looking at innovators around me, that some of them are very public figures, but then again, some of these how I built this type of innovators are lesser known, but their stories are still super impactful. So I look to get that inspiration from pretty much a lot of different sources.
No, that's great. I love hearing those types of stories, and people, starting different companies and what they go through. And you always see people at the end, right? They say it takes years to be an overnight success too. So just learning about, how much crap someone has to eat for so long to get to that point, I think is amazing. And I think, for you, someone doing it yourself is really, it's definitely a motivator. So that's great.
As well as yourself, getting a chance to meet the first generation of in your line, and there might be other generations that was before you that to see somebody come up and be an entrepreneur after another entrepreneur. It's super encouraging for me.
It's fun. You can see part of the signs behind me in my office. I have my great-great-grandfathers, right? All four of them ran a family business. I have all like mementos or pictures of that up there, right? And they're not always doing it because they have a cool app idea or cool technology, right? It's, in some cases what you have to do. It's just kind of, the path in front of you. So that's always a great motivator. So, similar, right? Just seeing the people kind of doing it and ahead of you doing it in different ways. So, Hoyt, I really appreciate you coming on. This was a great conversation. Welcome back anytime. Thanks again.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Lodestar's Lending Leaders. Please like, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars anywhere you get your podcast. I'd like to give a special thank you to the Lodestar team involved with the production of this podcast, including Elena Gardner, Tim Austin, and John Gardner.